Hi, yes. Well, I'm a teacher trying to make a difference to teaching, making it more enthusiastic for everyone. And the question I was asked was about culture clash and introverts. So culture clash, difficult to say, culture clash is about misunderstandings due to differences. And let's see how I turn the slide here. Uh, and so I wanted to start by explaining the different types of culture clash, where the lessons take place, because it does make a difference, how to deal with it, and consequently, how to deal with introverts. So the first thing is, what kind of culture clash is there? Well, there's the one that's due to ignorance, as I call it. That means stereotypes. So, for example, all the French are snobbish, all the Germans are cold. When I lived in Germany, I had a friend who said, "How can you live in Germany? They're so cold." And he'd never been to Germany, therefore, I don't know how he could have judged. In any case, stereotypes are often the reason for culture clash. And our non-verbal communication sometimes creates culture clash too, because one thing is what our face and mouth say, and one thing is our general non-verbal communication. Anyhow, to give an example, there's this yellow guy you can see on the picture. This is because a colleague had a Chinese man who turned up at the lesson with very funny greenish looking hair. He had thought that all Americans were blonde, and so he tried dyeing his hair blonde to blend in. That's, you know, the bad side of stereotypes. Then there's culture clash due to tradition, which is connected to stereotypes. So one says that South Americans are outspoken, whilst one says that Asians are reserved. Now, probably tendentially it is like that, but that doesn't mean that everyone's like that. But South Americans and Westerners in particular were taught that eye contact is particularly important to demonstrate you're interested in what the person is saying, you're paying attention to what they're saying. If you speak to many Asians, they'll look down as a form of respect, because it's respect towards their superiors, respect to someone who knows more than them. So if they're stared at, they'll feel uncomfortable. This is the kind of non-verbal communication I was mentioning. And some things which are totally appropriate in one country can be totally inappropriate in another. There was the case of, I think, a South American woman who went in the United States to touch a pregnant belly and the woman's breasts. She was, of course, really dismayed, and it turned out it was supposed to be a kind of blessing. So all these kinds of behavior have to be taken into consideration. Now, Arabs, I'm thinking more of Saudi Arabs. I mean, there are lots of kinds of Arabs, but particularly I'm thinking of them now. Sometimes there's difficulty with them. Men don't particularly like being taught by women, because women can't know more than men, so how can they teach men? On the other hand, women prefer to be taught by men because they, in their country, don't really get a chance to be taught by men. So why not? In one case, there was a really outspoken Saudi Arabian woman who was taking over the lesson, and the teacher took her aside and discovered that they're not allowed to be outspoken and speak their mind in Saudi Arabia. They risk punishment. So she was taking full advantage of speaking her mind. All these things, of course, make it difficult in a multicultural class. So now, where do lessons take place? That's another fundamental thing to be taken into consideration. If the lessons take place in the teacher's native country, one should expect the students to adapt as far as possible to the country, so to the teacher's country. This is, of course, particularly important in multicultural classes. Students will find that the teacher is more direct with their expressions rather than indirect. Teachers will tend to be more informal, and they'll tend to want to use first names rather than surnames. And some students will be uncomfortable with that because they're used to being respectful by using first. Then teachers in the Western world tend to sometimes chastise in public, and in other countries they lose faith like that. So all these things need to be taken into consideration in multicultural classes. Educational games. So in the Western world, we tend to make them an integral part of the learning consolidation. In the Eastern world, they feel it's a waste of time and they're not learning anything. So depending on where the lesson takes place, one has to take this into consideration. In the Western world, we encourage critical thinking. In the Eastern world, they're not so used to it. So all these make for cultural clashes. And in the student's native country, on the other hand, it's the teacher who should try and adapt a little, taking into consideration their customs and trying to learn as much as possible about them, still trying to make them understand that things like punctuality are, in any case, something fundamental, or that it's not right to help each other during a test, whilst for some cultures it's absolutely normal to help each other. Some countries may want to separate gender, if not in separate classes, at least in separate areas of the room. So what do we do to prevent culture clash? I think we should start by discussing respect from day one, and ask students at the very beginning of the course to share their cultural traditions. The pros of this is getting to know each other and our cultural differences, and to foster respect, understanding, tolerance. The cons are that some things are so ingrained, such as the eye contact, that we don't even realize that that's a kind of tradition. The environment in the classroom should be non-threatening, so students feel comfortable speaking about their problems, and the teacher should really avoid touchy subjects such as politics, religion, just to make sure we're on safe ground. What happens if we come to a real clash? So the teacher has to make sure he's open-minded, sensitive, and keeps calm. The best thing is to first understand why each student involved is upset. A typical example could be that someone crossed their legs, and in Thailand, for example, crossing your legs means that you might accidentally point your foot at someone, which is highly offensive. So one should then take each person separately and discuss the facts separately, and hope that once this has been discussed, one can not point at the students themselves, but make a general culture lesson out of this. Maybe discuss body language if it were the case of pointing feet, without though highlighting who was involved. Just make it a culture lesson so we avoid this in future. So try to face the problems in a general way, preventing first, and if not, talking about it peacefully and carefully. Of course, introverts are going to have a hard time in this situation. I usually think the best thing to do is to get the students in the class to all do an activity and dedicate at the beginning one-to-one time to the introvert. Then go on to get them to do pair work, then slowly group work, and finally, over time, get them to take part in class discussions, so getting them out of their comfort zone. Of course, if they're reserved, they shouldn't be asked personal questions, whilst if they're shy, one could record speaking so that they feel more comfortable. And we have to remember that all these differences we have to be tolerant for. As we can see in this picture, an Arab is leading someone by the hand. It's perfectly normal in Arab countries, and we have to accept that. So tolerance and respect, I think those are the most important things, and understanding. And I think that's it. I'm there.